The City Council is being held as a teleconference in response to local efforts to reduce the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We want to encourage everyone to please keep up the efforts to slow the spread of COVID-19 in Arcata. We know that by wearing masks and practicing social distancing, we can reduce this spike and keep our businesses open. Please support our businesses by masking up in Arcata. If you wish to make public comment during the meeting, either at the 2 open public comment periods or an individual agenda item, there are 2 ways to do so. 1, if you are logged on to the Zoom meeting webinar, click on Raise Your Hand on the right-hand side of your screen. When it is time for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, the clerk will unmute you and you will have 2 minutes to comment. You can also access this meeting by phone. Call the number at the bottom of the screen. Enter the meeting ID that is also at the bottom of the screen. Press star 9 on your phone. This will raise your hand. When it is time for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, the clerk will unmute your phone. You will hear a prompt that will indicate your phone is unmuted and you will have 2 minutes to comment. Now, please join me if you'd like to for the flag salute. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, will the city clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Pereira.
Here.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Here.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
All present.
Okay, hold on a moment. Next, we have ceremonial matters. And first, we have a proclamation in recognition of the Week of the Young Child. This is for April 10th through 16th, whereas the North Coast Children's Services and other local organizations in conjunction with the National Association for the Education of Young Children are celebrating the Week of the Young Child from April 10th through 16th, 2021. And whereas Head Start and Early Head Start programs nationally serve over 1 million low-income children up to 5 years old, with the North Coast Children's Services program serving nearly 1,000 children locally. And whereas teachers and others who make a difference in the lives of young children in Arcata deserve thanks and recognition, and public policies that support early learning for all young children are crucial to their futures. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby designates the week of April 10th through 16th, 2021 as the Week of the Young Child, and encourages our community to make an investment in early childhood education, because early years are learning years. Signed today by myself, and we will get a copy to North Coast Children's Services. Next, we have a proclamation in recognition of the 2021 virtual Godwit Days Spring Migration Bird Festival, April 16th through 18th, 2021. Whereas about 85 million Americans enjoy observing, photographing, or feeding wild birds, and a 2011 U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service study found that bird watchers contributed about $32 billion to the U.S. economy. And whereas birding is the 15th most popular outdoor activity, just below bicycling, about 18 million birders take trips exclusively to commune with other birders or count birds by sight or sound. And whereas the Godwit Day Spring Migration Bird Festival showcases the area's rich diversity of birds, normally attracting tourists from all over the United States and making Humboldt County a birding destination. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes the Humboldt County businesses and residents who are participating in the 2021 virtual Godwit Days Spring Migration Bird Festival, as well as future birding visitors to the Pacific Northcoast. May they be inspired to migrate back, just as the birds have been doing for centuries. To participate in virtual events this year, please visit godwitdays.org. Thank you. Okay, hold Hold on just a moment. Okay, next we have report by our annual report from the Wetlands and Creeks Committee. And do we have our Chair Bob Brown here for the report?
Good evening,
Hi.
council members. Good to see you again. Yeah, so I won't go over the report. Oh, for Godwood Days, I'm also on the Godwood Day board. Thank you for the proclamation. We've been accepting registrations for the last 2 weeks. We have 141 people registered and another week to go. So still a big event. And if you can do a virtual bird festival, you can almost do anything virtually. Huh? So anyway, so on to our annual report. And I see that our staff liaison, Emily Benvey, is here as well. I won't go through a lot of this, but this is our 28th year as a committee. This committee actually started in 1981. So we have actually completed 40 years if we include the years with as the Arcata Marsh Task Force. So, and then I was asked recently about the logo on the cover of our report. So this was done by a local botanist and artist for an urban streams conference that we held in 1996, so 25 years ago, where we had 300 people in attendance. So Arcata area has a lot of talent in the wetlands and restoration fields. So all right, well, moving on. Creeks and wetlands policies and ordinances. So we had an exciting opportunity to work with Thriving Earth Exchange Program, who excels at collaboration between connecting communities with scientists. And I just recently saw that they've posted this opportunity. And so basically they are looking for a scientist to help the city of Arcata with modeling wind and wave energy to inform a living shorelines flood protection strategy. So we're hoping to make that connection with a noted scientist for that. So in regards to management of city-owned creeks and wetlands, it lists several of the projects we've worked on, all been very successful, and we owe our success to our staff liaison, Emily Benvey, who's doing a really bang-up job, especially since half her department retired on her. And if it was up to me, I'd be suggesting giving her a promotion for all that work, but it's not up to me. So a couple other things going on with creeks and wetlands. One is there's some deferred maintenance of invasive management happening there. So 40 years later, since the marshes were built, invasives are getting a foothold. So that might be something we talk a little bit more. We also have, while the city promotes active transportation, we have a lot of e-mode type vehicles, e-bikes and e-skateboards and e-unicycles speeding up faster than the people and the dogs and the wildlife can handle down there. So, and then I just want to mention under future tasks, again, there's a list of projects we hope to attain. City council goals have been kind of light in directing the Wetlands and Creeks Committee on other types of projects. We recognize there's certainly a lot of other priorities that the city has, but we're certainly available to help the city council in any way that we can related to wetlands, creeks, stormwater, sea level rise, any of those sorts of issues. So anyway, that's my brief report. I could talk about it all night, but I know you have a busy agenda.
Thanks, Bob. Let's see if there's any questions from the council, starting with Councilmember Goldstein.
No questions. Thanks so much for coming and sharing that with us. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Schaefer.
No further questions, but thank you for your dedication to this committee and all the work that you guys do.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No questions, but thank you for all of your hard work.
And Vice Mayor Watson.
No questions. Really appreciate all the work. Thank you.
Yeah, and Bob, I'll just say, in looking at the work that the Wetlands and Creeks Committee does, I feel like it's so integral to what we do as a city that it may not be officially as part of our goal setting process, but that to me, when I look at the work you do around, sea level rise, the local coastal plan, all of that is just been so critical to the work that we do as a city and our planning. So just really want to recognize the work that this committee does to support that.
Well, thank you. And again, you have great staff and a great committee with whose names are on the cover of our report. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And have fun with Godwit Days. Okay, do we have any members of the public waiting to comment on this report?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay, great, thank you. Next, we'll move on to early oral communications. This is a 15-minute time period provided for people to address the council on matters that are not on tonight's agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements, and any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council at this time are limited to 2 minutes, and we can take up to 7 speakers during this 15-minute period. Please raise your hand if you are on Zoom, or press *9 if you are calling in by phone and wish to make a comment. And do we have anyone waiting in the queue?
Taking a moment to check if there's going to be any hands raised for public comment. We do not have any public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to our consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. So I'll go through and read the consent calendar. Item A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of March 17th, 2021. B, biweekly report on general warrants. C, declare a continuation of the local emergency related to the coronavirus pandemic. D, award a contract for long-range planning services for the Strategic Infill Redevelopment Program to PlanWest Partners in amount not to exceed $712,000 without further authorization, and authorize the city manager to execute all applicable documents. E, approve a subdivision agreement for the 30th Street Improvements Project with the Yurok Indian Housing Authority No. 3 LLC, and authorize the city manager to execute necessary documents and a California Environmental Quality Act exemption for the action. F, adopt resolution number 201-46, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata accepting the 2020 General Plan Annual Progress Report. And let's see, G, adopt resolution number 201-43, incorporating a list of projects for fiscal year 2021-2022 to be funded by SB1, the Road Repair and Accountability Act. And lastly, H, adopt a statement condemning the escalating violence and ongoing harassment directed at Asians, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders. So based on an updated resolution we received for item E, I will pull that item from the consent calendar, but are there any other council members that would like to remove an item? Okay. Are there any members of the public or staff that request an item be removed from the consent calendar?
No, there are not.
Okay, well, may I?
The city attorney would like to.
I believe we need to remove, or maybe you did already, item E.
Yes, we
We did. Okay, I'm sorry, I was reading it. My apologies.
We're on the same page. That's helpful. Not going rogue with the attorney, you know. Okay, let's see. I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item E.
I'll second that.
Oh, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I will call the vote by roll call. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion passes. So for item E, may we have an update from City Engineer Khatri?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, city staff, and member of public. I'll just read the title, so we are clear on it. I think I changed the title as well, so I'll just read the title and then give my brief staff report to you. So the title has been amended to adopt Resolution 201-47, approving a subdivision agreement with the UROC Indian Housing Authority and conditionally approving the final map for the 30th Street Improvements Project and authorizing city manager and city engineer to execute necessary documents. So that's the title. And so in a brief overview of the staff report, 30th Street project, which includes 36 affordable housing units, was originally approved in 2007. Developers were not able to complete the project because of the cost constraint and due to condition of approval on the project. So in 2014, staff brought the project to the council, and then the conditions were amended to make the project successful. In 2019, UROC Indian Housing purchased the property and partnered with the city and submitted a grant application to make the project successful. They were successfully awarded the grant, and they have funding to complete the project. Currently, the applicant or the UROC Indian Housing Authority is working on the tentative improvement plans, and right now they're in construction. In normal circumstances, applicant will complete all these improvements and come to the council for accepting the final map. However, because of the timing, they are not able to do that. And so they are asking the city to accept the conditionally accept the final map by entering into a subdivision agreement. The city's land use code and the Subdivision Map Act allows the process to do so. So what we are requesting today is to accept the final map and enter into a subdivision agreement. So before entering into a subdivision agreement, we want to make sure that all the improvements will be happening in future. So for that to happen, we want to make sure we get some sort of security for the improvements. So to date, the applicant has submitted a bonding for the partial improvement of the project, and they have promised that in next week or so, they will be submitting a line of credit that will satisfy the need for accepting the final map for the project. Execution of the agreement will allow the city to issue the building permit for the project. Once the building permit is issued, the applicant will be able to fulfill the funding requirement, which requires them to issue the occupancy of the 5 units before November 1, 2021. So this is a very unique case, and we have not done this. So we are requesting, and I have worked closely with city attorney, and we are able to do it. So we are requesting council to enter into this subdivision agreement for the project. This is very unique project in a lot of ways, because this project is funding other infrastructure projects also in the city, which is paying for the portion of the Annie and Mary Trail project in the amount of $1 million, and putting a bridge, which will be connecting project to a James Creek subdivision. So, which will help people walk from one subdivision to other subdivision. That helps the city. So, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Let's see, are there any questions from the council or comments? Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion for item E.
Nature, would you be willing just to reread the consent calendar agenda item, and then a council member could make a motion to that effect, just because it has changed from the agenda in front of them?
Yes. Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Please do.
Could you just briefly restate why we should do this?
Why, in the sense like to enter into subdivision agreement or accept the final map?
Both.
Both. We should do this for the success of the project. We have partnership with UROC Indian Housing Authority to be a partner and complete the project. And if we don't do so at this point, so they may lose funding because they will not be able to get the building permit in time. So I would say recommend to do this just to help our project partner. And
I would also add that without accepting the map, they won't be able to complete the subdivision. And so without the subdivision, there really is no project. So that's the critical piece for accepting the map. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or a motion from the council? Or sorry, Netra, if you could, I think to City Manager Deemer's recommendation, just restate what the changes that we would be making a motion on.
Yes, so I will just read the title. Staff is recommending to adopt resolution 201-47 approving a subdivision improvement agreement with the Iraq Indian Housing Authority and conditionally approving the final map for the 30th Street subdivision project and authorize the city manager and city engineer to execute necessary documents.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll call the vote by roll call. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion passes. And before we move on to old business, we just passed this in the consent calendar, but I just wanted to read an excerpt of the City of Arcata statement against racism and violence towards individuals of Asian descent, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders. The City of Arcata strongly condemns the surge of racially motivated violence against the Asian American and Pacific Islander AAPI communities since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. A new report by Stop AAPI Hate documented nearly 3,800 hate incidents nationwide in the past 12 months. We must come together as a city, a region, a nation to reject senseless racism and xenophobia. So if you hear someone erroneously blaming the pandemic on the AAPI community, please correct them. If you encounter harassment, try to de-escalate if possible. To work towards building a region where we all have the opportunity to thrive, we cannot be silent when violence and hatred are experienced by anyone in our community. So to read more about local actions dedicated to building racial equity in our community, visit equityarcata.com and learn more about how you can support the local AAPI community. Visit Humboldt Asians and Pacific Islanders in Solidarity's Facebook page at facebook.com/HAPI Humboldt. So just wanted to thank the constituents that shared some of these resources with us. Okay, now we will move on to old business. And this is to further consider a request for an emergency hazard pay ordinance for grocery and large drugstore customer-facing employees. And may I have a staff report from City Manager Deemer?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. During your March 17th Council meeting, you discussed a request to adopt an emergency ordinance that would obligate grocers and drugstores of a certain size to compensate basically customer-facing employees with hazard pay to acknowledge the important and the high personal contact role that they've played throughout the pandemic. During that meeting, the council requested that staff gather additional information for further consideration. That information was summarized in your staff report tonight, and I'll just talk through the very sort of highlights of that and then be available to answer questions. At the end of my report, I will turn it over to your City Attorney, Nancy Diamond, to just give you an update on sort of the legal landscape around hazard pay ordinances. One of the initial questions that the council had was sort of the size of our local grocers in terms of number of employees. And what we found in the survey was that on average, our local grocers employ about 80 employees. For Murphy's, that would be putting the two Murphy stores together. You know, they got to about that number with a range from 30 to 95. You also asked about store profits, and while they are private businesses and only a couple of them reported store profits, each of the respondents reflected on very high volume sales during what I think we all sort of can recall as the panic stockpiling period that occurred starting in March of 2020. Most of the stores indicated that that period lasted about 3 months and that sales returned to normal levels in the summer of 2020. The stores were asked about additional expenses that they have incurred during the pandemic, and they all reported some balance of the following types of activities: increased labor and supplies for their continual sanitation, installation of safety barriers, protective devices, and hand washing stations, and purchase of personal protective equipment for staff and customer use. I would say all of the stores had participated in some staff appreciation efforts. Most stores indicated they did pay some level of appreciation or hero pay for the first few months. April through June was the most common payment period. Only one store reported that appreciation pay continued, and that was through, I believe, just the end of February, beginning of March of 2021. Most stores also indicated, in addition to any periods of appreciation pay, that they did add 1 or 2 additional bonuses, and they did plan to continue that practice through 2021. And one store offered a 15% discount for staff for the entirety of the year. Another question came up around sort of vaccine access, and the vaccine rollout really has just gotten underway for the grocery industry. 2 of the stores, of our local stores, indicated that really all staff have been provided access to vaccine appointments. The remaining stores have all just very recently gained access to vaccines as of about March 31st, and they're working to get staff matched with appointments. Most of the stores are providing paid time off for staff to receive vaccines, and one store provided a $100 incentive bonus for staff who received the vaccine. The other question that you had was really what would the cost of the hazard pay be? And of course, that's going to be fully dependent on what the per hour requirement of the hazard pay is. But local stores reported between $1,500 for the very small stores and 4,500 hours per week would be subject to hazard pay, depending obviously on the size of the store. Just as sort of a reminder, the local request that came before you from the United Food and Commercial Workers, it appeared they are specifically requesting the ordinance to be for grocery stores only for an initial 90-day period, unless it's extended or if the city moves into the yellow tier. As you know, all of Humboldt County cities went into orange tier this week. Stores, the local request was that there was a split dollar that stores that employ 500 or more nationwide, 15 or more in Arcata, required to pay $4 an hour, and stores that employ less than 500 but more than 25 in Arcata, which what we've learned in the last 2 weeks is that that would virtually be all of your local grocers do employ more than 25, would be required to pay $3 an hour. If the council is interested in moving forward with an ordinance, we would still need sort of the same direction that we talked about at the last meeting, which businesses based on size or number of employees would be subject to the ordinance, identifying the type of business, grocery only or grocery and large drugstore, the amount of the premium pay, if there would be credit for voluntary payments, should they be provided. It appears at this point all of the stores have ended any of those appreciation payments, and then identify the duration of the ordinance. So that's just a high-level overview of the information staff was able to gather, and I will turn it over to your city attorney to give you an update on the legal analysis.
There isn't much of an update since we met 3 weeks ago. The decision that the United States District Court had issued denying a preliminary injunction was appealed by the California Grocers Association to the Ninth Circuit, and that was denied. So now it's being litigated in federal court, the merits of the lawsuit. So the litigation appears to be still very much alive. We did not get any new communication from the California Grocers Association before tonight's meeting, but it does appear that they continue to be serious in challenging these kinds of ordinances, and they appear to be continuing to challenge on the bases that they identified in the letter that they had submitted to the council previously. So there's not a whole lot more to say unless you have any questions. You know, it's about where we were 3 weeks ago.
I have a question, Nancy. So United Food and Commercial Workers has, as a union, stated that they would intervene if there was any legal problems for the city. And I mean, so basically in that situation, is that possible, and how will that protect Arcata?
We have in the past had third parties basically step in and cover the costs, if not the outright defense, if Arcata gets sued. They don't become the defendants in the action, that is the city of Arcata, but they, through agreement, they will just agree to litigate, and then we work closely with them to make sure that they're representing the city's best interests. So there is, at least we've done it before, there is at least one prior example of the proponents of, that was an initiative measure actually, the proponents that came forward and found defense counsel when the city was sued. So yeah, that is possible. I have not explored it at all to know, what the full extent of the resources are that they're offering, but it's not something that we cannot do.
Let me just see if there's any other questions from the council. Councilmember Goldstein?
Yeah, I have just a few questions. Thank you, Karen and staff, for going out and trying to get us more information. I really appreciate it. I had a question / statement about the sanitation supplies, PPE, all of that stuff that was mentioned. I would say that my statement part would be that I know some stores at least had a type of loan that was forgiven. And so that wasn't an actual cost that they incurred. And then the question part would be, what, if any, of that type of information did you find in your search in the last few weeks?
Yeah, that is a great question. And that is a question that we should have answered. We did not specifically ask that question in our survey, nor did anybody voluntarily tell us what types of government assistance that they've gotten through COVID. I'd be happy to go out if this continues, at some point, but, and ask that again and see.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, I know that it was pretty readily available. So all businesses should have had the opportunity to apply, from my understanding. Whether they did or not, I don't know which ones did and which ones didn't. I know of a few that did. But that type of spending should have not come out of the business's pocket. Let's see, what else did I have a question on? Oh, I think just that vaccines, obviously we want people to get vaccinated as quickly as possible, but that's not going to protect them tomorrow. They're still spending a lot of time this year risking, their health and safety to make sure that we have food and groceries and everything we need here in Arcata. So I just wanted to note that vaccines aren't like a perk or a bonus. It's something that we all need to be getting, for our own health and the health of our community. And we definitely need to be, ensuring that everybody who's an essential worker is, the best that we can do to support that happening quickly, the better. But I just don't want that to be confused with, we're thanking you for your hard work by getting you a vaccine, which I don't think anyone was saying. I just wanted to be really clear on that, since we were talking about vaccines versus getting people hazard pay. I don't think I had any other questions right now. I think just last time we met, I think we had a really robust and difficult conversation. And ultimately what I took away from it was that we all really care deeply about our community, and we might just have different ways of approaching that, or, see slightly different ways of doing that. But that ultimately we all really care about this community. And so I would like to see if we can come to some sort of, agreement and something that we all feel comfortable with. I'd like to see us move forward tonight, just so that we're not keeping our community waiting. I'd prefer not to keep pushing this out and out, for business owners, for employees, for everyone, wondering, are they not going to pass this? So that was just my only other statement, was that I think for me, it feels like in the best interest of our community just to try to move forward with something tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Let's see, Councilmember Schaefer, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I do have one question, and this might not be answerable. It would probably, require a lot more collaboration and research by city staff. But I mean, what can we do? Because there has been talk about, well, then why don't you just, create greater efforts to get staff vaccinated? And so what can we do, I guess, as a city to ensure vaccination? Because that is really kind of out of our hands and more in the hands of the county and the healthcare providers. And I think we're at a point now that vaccine availability is widely now available to pretty much everybody above the age of, or about to be to everybody above the age of 16. And so it's actually going to be probably more difficult and more impacted for these essential workers that have not gotten vaccinated yet to get appointments. So I guess my question is kind of what could we do? Is there anything that we can do in that way? And then kind of just going off of what Emily said, it's not the same to show appreciation. Congratulations, here's a vaccine. It's not necessarily the same thing as, providing this hazard pay for addressing the hazard that they are still facing in light of, not being vaccinated or fully vaccinated. And then also to, ensure against, we don't know about variants yet. We don't necessarily, know if that hazard is completely resolved with a vaccination as well.
I cannot answer whether or not the hazard is completely neutralized with a vaccine. I think time will tell. So that's going to be ongoing. From the standpoint of access to the vaccine, and I don't want to speak for, the county public health officer either, but I know that I think strategically they made sure that grocery forward-facing customer service employees were eligible prior to this April 15th date. So really by, I think it was March 27th or 28th, Dr. Hoffman released all of those employees to be eligible here in Humboldt County. And I think in part intentfully to make sure that access was received before the large opening happened in mid-April. So when I talked with, I had what ended up being a little larger meeting with some of the grocers, which was actually just last Wednesday. And two stores, both Safeway and the Co-op, have reported they've had access availability for all of their employees. Murphy's and Ray's reported that they had both been contacted now by multiple sites and were able to start to work through that from an appointment basis based on what was convenient for their employees. So I do think, my best estimate now is that really those employees have made access to appointments, but I'm happy to continue to follow up on that. And, if there's any advocacy that the city can do to help, I don't think it's going to be necessary. In fact, I think both of those stores were contacted direct by the county, which then allows you to come in a batch of employees that way. So, but I'd be happy to follow up.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all for now, I guess. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
So sorry, I was having a problem unmuting. I don't have any questions. I absolutely believe that all of the frontline workers should be compensated by their employers in whatever ways that they are able to do that while still balancing their budgets and ultimately keeping their doors open. But I don't think it's in our purview as a council to legislate that.
Okay, let's see. Any questions from Vice Mayor Watson?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any questions as well. Let's open up to public comment so then we can go back to, and have discussion as a council. Any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
We do, Mayor. We will have our first speaker is Scott. Do you want to go ahead, please? You will have 2 minutes.
First, thank you to those on the council who've listed your pronouns in your name on Zoom and for your statement about violence against the AAPI community. That certainly overlaps with what I want to say. My name is Scott Oman. My pronouns are he, him. I am a grocery store worker in Arcata. I'm asking you to please expedite approval of the grocery worker hazard pay ordinance without further delay. If you have questions about it or my experiences over the past year, please respond to the emails I've sent you. I'd be happy to discuss my experience and perspective in more depth than I'm able to in these 2 minutes. Frankly, some of what I've heard tonight does not reflect my experience and is just not accurate. For the past year during this pandemic, I have seen customer volumes that were unprecedented during my previous 10 years in grocery. Throughout the pandemic, we've been subjected to insults, threats, and worse, simply for asking people to wear a mask. To say nothing of being exposed to the risk of contracting the potentially lethal virus or suffering from the effects of the still largely unknown long COVID syndrome. While taking in record profits, our companies have consistently been a few steps behind on best practices for safety in the interests of their short-term profits. What PPE has been provided has been inadequate, such as single-layer fabric masks. We have been given no assistance in obtaining vaccinations. And as cases surged in the community in our stores, we had our appreciation pay terminated. We have received insufficient and contradictory direction, including being told repeatedly that we are or are not allowed to refuse service or ask a customer to leave if they refuse to wear a properly fitted mask that covers their mouth and nose. When we did receive our hazard pay, we were still profitable enough that those who received bonuses got double sales bonuses for the quarter. It is not as if they cannot afford it. I know this might seem unfair to some, as there are many others.
Thank you very much for your comments.
I'll email you the rest of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, next we have Alexis. Can you go ahead, please, Alexis? You have 2 minutes.
Yes, my name's Alexis. I'm a member of UFCW. I'm also a grocery worker of 20 years. I live here in Arcata, but I work in McKinleyville and work for a big chain as well. I can tell you as an experience, the same as the Scott before me, he said the same thing. We have not had, we had hazard pay for about 3 months, and then it was cut off right when the company was making vast amount of money, more money than they ever have. And the 20 years of my grocery experience, I have never seen this many people come in and out of a store in my whole life. And I've worked both here and in Sacramento. We've had seen more than record profits, and there's no reason for the companies not to give back to the people who are actually putting their lives on the line every day. I have elderly parents who live in Del Norte County that I have not been able to see for 6 months because I could carry it in an asymptomatic carrier and take it to them and can kill them. And so I have a concern that even though I live on my own, who I take care of elderly parents, that I can't help them because I have to stay here and make sure that I don't give it to them. Yes, we have been giving vaccines. We're allowed to get vaccines, but there's been absolute chaos on ideas of who's going to give it and where. We've actually had to go out on our own as employees to get it because they have taken sign-up sheets but not followed through. We have had insults and injuries and stuff given to people and inadequate stuff. So I hope that you guys would be able to pass it because it's not just something that's going to go away anytime soon, but it is something that's very important. And especially for essential workers who are out there doing this every day. I understand that it's a touchy situation, but I hope that you guys would listen to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Mario. Go ahead, please, Mario. You'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, council members, mayor. Once again, I'm Mario Fernandez, organizer, researcher with United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 5. First and foremost, this is an opportunity to really lift up low-wage workers through hazard pay and recognize the essential work that they've maintained for over a year at this point. There's no debate as to the record profits the larger employers have accumulated, particularly as we see in town, Safeway, CVS. While we're drafting these ordinances can be difficult, there's a simplistic approach you could take. to properly provide recompense to these workers, frame the ordinance around the larger national employers and how much grocery they carry. Do they employ 500 nationally, and do they employ more than 25 locally? Do they carry at least 10% of groceries in their local stores? My hope is that your discussion tonight will move forward quickly and pragmatically on hazard pay. The longer we dither, the more time goes by that these workers remain without any sort of economic recognition. Even as the times around the pandemic are changing, and we still have a required mask mandate, and we may luckily be downgraded to orange or upgraded depending on how the outlook is. It's still a time where we are in very much a realistic pandemic, and so you will certainly have more questions as part of the discussion, but I urge you to consider adding retroactive pay if the development of this ordinance continues well into the month of April. So please take into account the holistic approach into this and take into account the lives that these workers have already commented on. So thank you for hearing me this evening.
Thank you. Okay, checking one last time for any further public comment on this item. No more public comment for this item, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So let's bring this back to the council. I know we did a roll call before, but I didn't know if we wanted to go through that roll call again. We can start with Councilmember Goldstein.
I'm having mute issues too, Stacy. I keep hitting the button. It's not working. Well, first, I just wanted to really thank Scott and Alexis for their really honest and vulnerable public comment. I don't think that it's easy to get up and share the working conditions you're in, especially when your employer could be listening in. And I think that can feel really difficult. So I just want to honor, the bravery and strength it takes to stand up at public comment and speak out for yourself and your fellow employees like that. And I think it gives us another perspective, since a lot of our information is kind of reliant on what business owners and general managers have provided for us. I really appreciate both of them being willing to come forward and share tonight. In terms of further questions or comments, I mean, I like to move things forward, as I said earlier. I think that many of the suggestions that we got from the draft ordinance that we saw from the union and that staff has written up, I think all of that sounds really good to me. And so, I'm happy to continue talking it out because I want us to all, get to a place where we feel good about this and could move forward with something. But I would really I'll just reiterate that I'd really like to see something move forward tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Schaefer.
So thank you to the members of our community that made public comment tonight, and also the countless emails that I know that we have all received surrounding this hazard pay ordinance and these stories that we have heard, and thinking about what a hazard is, and especially this the brief insight into the story that Scott shared. Hazard also might not just include getting sick. Hazard includes harassment by people who won't wear masks, by people who are harassing grocery store workers. I've witnessed firsthand at my local grocery stores that I've been to. I have seen employees, with the utmost respect, ask shoppers to put on a mask, to please, keep their social distance, and to, please wait in line to come into the store, and, be utterly cut down and treated like they're nothing. And that's just, it's not right. And, I am going to stand with workers. I'm going to stand with the union, and I'm going to stand with people over profits, because that is kind of the platform that I was elected to this office on. And that is, the members of the community that I have touched base with the most. And, that I feel that their stories matter, and that, this is something, though small, that the city can do to help, improve the working conditions and improve the hazard that a lot of these grocery workers are facing. And so, just the idea that we as government officials legislate when private business fails to protect workers. That's why we have child labor laws. That's why we have an 8-hour workday. That's, why we have labor laws and regulations, often because of situations where private businesses are not, protecting the workers in the way that we see fit. So also the fact that this is money that's going to go directly back into our community, honestly, probably back into these grocery stores where people and workers spend their money locally and, buy things, essential workers buy essential items that they need for their homes. And so I would also like to see us move forward with something that I'm very, the local request that is in the staff report, those kind of parameters are how I would answer your questions, probably for the directions for consideration, that it would affect grocery stores, that it would be 90 days or until the city moves into the yellow tier, which, we just moved into the orange tier. We're looking good. People are getting vaccinated. We are reaching a point where, maybe even before 90 days is up, we could move into that yellow tier. And the $4 an hour for the 500 nationwide or 15 in Arcata, and then the $3 an hour for 25 or more within Arcata would be how I would answer those directions for consideration as well. So I'll leave my comments there for now, but thank you.
Great, thanks. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
I agree with the points that Emily, Councilmember Goldstein and Councilmember Schaefer both made. I do agree with the spirit of that. My hesitation again is that there are lots of frontline workers and essential workers, and I feel like this has the potential to open up Pandora's box, and I'm just going to state again that I just don't think it's in our purview as city council members to be legislating this. So that's still my stance.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Watson.
I really appreciate everyone that contacted us as well, and I appreciate all the hard work by our grocery workers and the challenges they faced. I feel like this might make sense for some of the larger communities we've seen it pass in. I don't know that it's really a good fit for our smaller communities here. And it's tough because I'd really like to support it, but I don't see a way to do it that makes sense. And those are pretty much all my comments right
now. Yeah, actually, I'd like to build upon what Vice Mayor Watson has stated. I kind of touched on this in the last meeting, that we do have a different landscape here in terms of the types of grocers that we have in our community versus the other communities that have passed these ordinances. The ordinances that have been passed in other communities, 500 or more employees nationwide. I think the lowest we had seen was 300 employees nationwide. So what's being proposed would create a tiered system based on size of employer. And I can't really see, first of all, a justification for that. I can see why in other communities, why they created that separate level of, higher than 500 employees. I think to very much address what's been talked about is these record profits, billions of dollars in profits that are not trickling down to workers that work for these large employers. And yet I think we have a different landscape here in Arcata in terms of who our grocers are. And it does include some of those larger employers, but it also doesn't. It includes very much smaller employers that do not have the same level of, the profits. I mean, they're just not, it's not a level playing field to compare these different levels of employers. And I understand the intent of offering different levels of pay. But from a legislative perspective, I feel like how can I justify why there's this difference in pay? One is because one has 500 or more employees, so they get billions of dollars in profits and they can do it. But the $1 difference for a smaller employer when they're not even making millions of dollars in profits. That's just kind of the thing I'm grappling with here. I think all of us do, want to, support our community and recognize the hazards that grocery workers face. Many frontline workers have faced, but it's just hard for me to legislate on this, because the part of me wants to say, well, let's keep it similar to all the other ordinances of 500 or more employees nationwide and use that as a threshold. And yet we know that would basically put a line between half of our grocery worker community. In many of these other communities where they've passed these ordinances, a majority of grocery workers are working at these larger employers. And so it is hard for me to see why we would create this tiered system, whether we're doing different dollar amounts or saying one group, this larger employer group, these employees would get this benefit over another. So that's kind of where I'm at. I agree with much of the legislative intent behind this, but when I think about the practical application of what our community looks like versus the other communities that have passed these ordinances, that's what's getting difficult for me to, how to support that. So those are just some of my thoughts. I don't know if there's any further comments from our colleagues here.
I guess I have a question, and I don't know if this would ease some of your concerns or not, but how would you feel if we went with something that was a slightly smaller dollar amount and we just made it the same across the board? So if we said like $2 or $3 an hour and it was just everybody, instead of saying it was $4 at one tier and $3 at another tier, would that feel a little more equitable to you, or is that still not really sitting right?
I think for me, when I think about $2 to $3 for grocers that are, under 500 employees or 300 employees here locally, when we're looking at the local landscape, I think about what's realistically the profit margin here and the cost per week for that or per month. To me, I just see if we're talking millions of dollars of profits, it's a much easier decision, to make. Obviously, we don't have, can't look at all of their budgets, but I don't foresee that, this is millions of dollars of profit in this time period that we'd be talking about. I mean, if it's in thousands, then it makes a big difference. The thousands of dollars that this would cost an employer. And I'm not particularly concerned about the billion-dollar companies and their ability to pay. I'm not worried about them. But when it is, a smaller employer that is a part of our community, the workers that we represent, they're our constituents. And so, but also our local businesses, our smaller employers, those also serve a critical role in our community as well. And so it's not to say that one, that it's necessarily equal in terms of weight, but I think for me, it's like I have to consider those factors as well. So I think in short, I think $2 to $3 for me, when I think about the profit margin for the not billionaire companies, that's a harder thing for me to justify.
Okay, thanks for entertaining my question.
Yeah, no. I appreciate the discussion, because it's not an ideal situation, obviously. Well, let's see. From a process standpoint, there's been no motion introduced. I know we're having a dialogue about this. I don't know if someone wants to introduce a motion or if we're looking at the makeup of the discussion and where it's landing. But I just want to open the floor to any other comments or thoughts from the council.
Yeah, so I mean, just seeing where this discussion is landing, I imagine if I'm about to make a motion that it will probably not pass, but I mean, that's where I'm standing. I know Emily and I both want to move forward with this. So I guess I move to have staff draft an ordinance that follows the guidelines of the local request in the staff report.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion before we go to a vote? Okay, I will call the vote by roll call. Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Nay.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Nay.
And sadly, I vote nay as well. So motion fails. Is there any other comments, thoughts on this item? Okay. Oh,
I was just going to say, I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone who has reached out to us and put in all the hard work, because I'm sure this outcome for all of you is disappointing, and I don't want you to feel like your work was in vain, because I think we did all listen and appreciate at least the things that you brought forward to us. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has emailed and called in and everything. I know you put in a lot of hard work and it is appreciated.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that as well, and thank you especially also to John and Mario from United Food and Commercial Workers for their transparency and helpfulness, and also just hoping swift vaccination efforts for all of our frontline workers, everybody that is facing the public every day, and yeah, so.
Agreed with that. And yeah, just in closing, just want to, I mean, this clearly, this is our second meeting discussing this. This clearly was not an easy decision for our council. And I know sometimes when things get, reported out, it'll just go down to how the vote went. And I get that. And, but I do hope that folks that have listened and do know that this council really, really deliberated and took a lot of time to think this through in this difficult decision. So I know it was a disappointing outcome for many, and I totally understand that perspective. So with that, we will now move on to other old business. Item B, adopt resolution number 201-45, authorizing the submission of city applications for community development block grant coronavirus response round 2 and 3 funding. May we have a staff report from Community Development Director Loya.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Vice Mayor and council members. Tonight before you, we originally proposed to have you adopt resolution 201-45, but instead I'm going to ask that you receive a brief staff report, open the public hearing, and continue this hearing to April 21st to then adopt some resolutions at that point. In January of this year, you approved CDBG CV23 application that included 3 activities: Arcata House Partnership, improving homeless services, a radio project, and a public outreach project. And subsequent to that authorization, CDBG informed us that 2 of those activities would not be eligible. They said that we could do the public outreach using our admin dollars, but that the radio project wouldn't be considered eligible. And so we went back to the community and came back to Knight with a single project, which is working with Arcata House Partnership, expanding their scope, which will include both improved access and intake, improved ability to serve food and meals to homeless individuals as part of that engagement, the ability to manage sharps, And then importantly, to be able to clean up public spaces, to work with another entity to clean up public spaces, and as part of that outreach and engagement. We still think that that's a solid project and want to bring that forward to you on the 21st. But what's happened between the drafting of the staff report and that resolution and tonight is that Fortuna realized that they weren't going to be able to use their CV23 monies because of a PI project that they are looking to do, a program income project that they're looking to do, which prevents them from accessing their CV23 money. So Fortuna's city manager, Mayor Perry, reached out to us and to Eureka and said, hey, look, we can't use these funds. The state is saying that we can enter into an MOU and you can use our funds essentially. And so this was fortuitous because Arcata House Partnership doesn't just serve Arcata, they serve the county at large, and they've worked in Fortuna quite a bit. And so what we're proposing to do is to bring back on the 21st an MOU with Fortuna to access their CV23 funds, add that in part to Arcata House Partnership project, and they would be expanding their service both within Arcata and within Fortuna with that. So it would be a win-win for both jurisdictions. And then in addition, we're working with the CDBG staff to try and determine eligibility for a third project under the CV funding. We're allowed a maximum of 3 activities. And that third project would help fund the creation of outdoor COVID safe events, likely working with the Playhouse or Arcata Main Street or an entity like that that could pull the resources together to create a model that could then also be applied countywide. And so we put a little money into that project as well. And so, yeah, as a result of sort of the windfall of Fortuna's CV23 money, which both Arcata and Eureka will be accepting a portion of if the council agrees to enter that MOU, we'd like to continue this to April 21st and bring back resolutions and MOUs at that time to facilitate a slightly larger partnership with Arcata House Partnership. So I'd be happy to answer any questions and certainly encourage the council to hear what the public has to say if anybody's interested in speaking on this item.
Okay, thank you. Let's start with questions from the council, starting with Vice Mayor Watson.
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Schaefer.
No questions. Thank you, Director Loya.
Councilmember Goldstein.
No questions. Thanks.
And I don't have any questions. So let's see if there's any members of the public that would like to comment on this item.
For attendees, a reminder, if you're logged into the Zoom, to click on raise your hand on the right hand of the screen if you are interested in commenting on this item. And if you called in via phone, press *9 on your phone to raise your hand. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this particular item? We do not have any public comment.
Okay, well, I will entertain a motion from the council.
I move that we adopt resolution number 201-45, authorizing the submission of the city's CDBG CV23 application.
Can I ask for a slightly modified motion? To just continue the item to the 21st, and we'll bring all of the new material back. And I apologize that we didn't have that information when we wrote the staff report. Otherwise, that would have been the recommendation.
Okay. What Director Loya said.
I will second that.
Okay, great. We have a motion and a second. I'll call the vote by roll. Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next under old business, we have item C, adopt resolution number 201-42, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata requesting an amendment to its 2017 CDBG grant number 17-CDBG-12017 to increase funding for the wastewater treatment plant improvements project ultraviolet disinfection system. Turn it over to you, Director Loya.
I apologize for that ridiculously long title. This was supposed to be on a consent calendar, and consent calendar titles are required to read the same as the resolution title, and CDBG dictated the resolution title. So, but in addition to very long titles, the CDBG program also has very long dollars, apparently. They contacted us and let us know that if we needed more money for our UV project, that we could ask for it. And so we've done a brief analysis to assess, what the project costs are likely to come in at, higher than what we anticipated in years prior. And so we're asking for the council to adopt resolution 201-42, increasing the UV water and sewer improvements to $498,338. So this recommendation reads correctly if you just adopt resolution 201-42.
Great, thank you. Let's see if there's any questions from the council, starting with Councilmember Schaefer.
No questions, thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Goldstein.
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No questions.
Vice Mayor Watson.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I don't have anything as well. Do we have any public comment?
Taking a moment to double check for public comment. And we do not have any public comment for this item.
Okay, I will entertain a motion from the council.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 201-42, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata requesting an amendment to its 2017 CDBG grant number 17-CDBG-12017 to increase funding for the wastewater treatment plant improvements project's ultraviolet disinfection system.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Well, I'll call the vote by roll call. Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we're on to new business. Item A, appoint one new member to the Transactions and Use Tax Oversight Committee for a term expiring September 30th, 2022 or 2024, and one new member to the Wetlands and Creeks Committee for a term expiring March 31st, 2023. Let's see, do we have a recommendation motion to appoint folks to these assignments, or are there any questions from the council?
Would you like since it's two different committees, would you like two separate motions or does it matter?
Yeah, I think you can do a single motion.
Okay, thank you.
I would say my only comment is we give Colin Fisk the term till 2024, unless anyone has any disagreement.
You could include it in a motion.
Just wanted to make sure it was okay with everybody. All right. I'll move to appoint Colin Fisk to the Transactions and Use Tax Oversight Committee for a term expiring September 30th, 2024, and to appoint Crystal Ray Heaney to the Wetlands and Creeks Committee for a term expiring March 31st, 2023.
I'll second.
Okay, before we vote on this, is there any public comment on this item?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay, I will call the vote by roll call. Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Congratulations to our newest city committee members. Okay, our second item under new business is item B, receive a project update report from Nordic Aqua Farms, a Norway-based seafood company proposing to build a land-based fish farm at the former Samoa pulp mill. The company is proposing to grow Atlantic salmon using a mixture of fresh and salt water. And we have presenters Marianne Ness, Nordic Aqua Farms Commercial Director in charge of the California project, Scott Thompson, Nordic Aqua Farms Project Manager and Engineer, and Lynette Mullen, Nordic Aqua Farms Humboldt County Community Liaison. So welcome, Marianne, Scott, and Lynette. Turn it over to you for your presentation.
Thank you. Go ahead, Lynette.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to thank the council for the opportunity to allow Nordic to present tonight, just to give an update on the project. Introductions were made, so I think at this point I'll just go ahead and pass it over to Marianne. And Marianne, just let me know when you want me to share the screen and presentation.
Sure, you can go, excuse me, go ahead right away. Sorry.
Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yes. Well, you can go to the next slide. As you said, Nordic Aqua Farms is a Norwegian-based company. It started in Norway about 8 years ago, and we have 2 farms in Denmark and 1 in Norway, and then a engineering firm in Denmark, and then 2 proposed projects in the US, 1 in Belfast, Maine, and this one in Humboldt, California. So that's a brief background on the company. As you can hear, I'm also Norwegian. Went to school on the West Coast, but live in Maine. So, and still heading up this project. Hope to get back as soon as I can. What you see here is the existing site. As you can see, it's pretty dilapidated at this point, and it needs substantial cleanup. To the right, you see the proposed farm, and I can go more into details what the different buildings are. Lynette, you can show the next slide as well. This is seen from the south, and we will tear down the smokestack and the boiler building, and most of the infrastructure, except for that white building to the east. You can go to the next, Lynette. Basically, we're building a fully contained facility. So if you look to the building in the middle, that's the, that one, yes. That's the hatchery and the smolt facility. That's where we bring in eggs, and they're quarantined and tested before they're hatched and put into the smolt facility. They grow in this facility until they're about a pound. Then they are transferred to the larger buildings to the south and north. Those are the grow-up buildings where they grow to harvest size in tanks indoors. When they're ready to harvest, they swim in swim pipes from the grow-up buildings to the building in the middle to the west or to the left in this site plan. Where you have a perch facility, and then you harvest the fish and then you process the fish. There's also a huge wastewater treatment plant. That's the white building to the north of that building, in between the large grow out and the processing building. And here's where we treat all the discharge water from the facility. We remove 99% of TSS and BOD and phosphorus, and more than 90% of the nitrogen as well, which is important for its discharge through the existing discharge pipe and into the ocean. So this is a highly fully contained facility. And one of the reasons why we're proposing Atlantic salmon on the Pacific coast is that that's a species that's bred for fish farming through decades. So they are cultivated and adapted to live in tanks and in fish farms. And as we said, the facility is escape-proof. There's several physical barriers for the fish, so they won't be able to leave the facility. And even with a tsunami or a major seismic event, the facility is built to withstand any event. So, and one of our core missions is also to replace imported salmon. The market is primarily 90% of the fresh salmon eaten in the US is imported by airplanes. So replacing that by placing these facilities closer to the consumers, that's the mission of the company. And this is the only way you can build them in the US based on current regulations, but also the more climatic or situation that you have. Here in Humboldt and in Maine, you have access to cold water, so you can actually build these facilities and do it in a way that is fairly environmentally sustainable compared to building them. I mean, these facilities are proposed in Florida and Texas and the desert in Nevada. We believe that we need access to clean, cold seawater to succeed. And that's why we chose Humboldt and Eureka, or the Samoa Peninsula, as our site. If you go to the next one, Lynette. So where are we right now? We have applied for a discharge permit, an NPDES permit through the Water Board. We sent the application last fall. We do expect a decision late summer. It has been through consultations with the EPA right now and will be out for public comment this spring. We're also applying for a coastal development permit, a discharge permit from the Coastal Commission. And we expect a decision this summer as well. And the CEQA, the initial study, and the coastal development permit, we have the Humboldt County as the lead agency. And public comment period is planned to start. I hope it gets out by next week. We're doing the final tweaks with the county right now to get it out for a 30-day public comment period and for a decision in the planning board in May. That's the plan. We have applied for air quality permits, and that we will assume that we will obtain this spring as well. And then we're currently in dialogue with Department of Fish and Wildlife regarding our aquaculture registration and our egg import permits. And of course, once we have hopefully received our permits, there will be an application submitted for the demolition permit and site preparations. So if everything goes as planned, we can start that later this year, most likely this fall. And there will be, as we said, a public comment period. It's probably about 1,500 pages, so it's a lot of reading for people to follow this. But it's been a lot of good science that's gone with the project. So we encourage people to read through it and then participate in the public comment period. You can go. I think this is a very brief introduction to the project, and we're happy to take any questions or comments.
Great. Well, thank you, Marianne, for that presentation. I'll just now ask the council for any questions they may have. Let's start with Councilmember Goldstein.
No questions. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Councilmember Schaefer.
No further questions right now. Thank you guys so much.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Vice Mayor Watson.
No questions. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions as well. I really appreciate you all taking the time to give us an update. I know it's been of great interest to our community where this is at. So we'll continue to follow this and just appreciate the work that you're doing in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on this item?
Giving a moment to check for public comment on this item, and I do not see any public comment.
Okay, great. Are there any final comments from Marianne, your team, before we close?
If I can just let folks know if you have any follow-up questions, if anything comes up later, or if there are individuals that that you think we ought to reach out to, maybe sectors of the community that we have not connected with in a way that we should, please don't hesitate to let me know. I know that Karen's got my contact information. Sophia, I believe you do as well. Stacy does. So please just feel free to reach out at any point if you've got questions, or again, if there are groups or individuals you think I ought to be reaching out to. Excuse me.
Great. Thanks, Lynette. And thank you for taking the time to meet with us. I know it's late where you are, Marianne.
Right. Yeah.
Good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, next under new business, we have item C, public hearing to approve the annual engineer's report and declare the city's intention to continue to levy and collect assessments of existing assessment districts to include Mad River Parkway Business Center, Windsong Subdivision, and Janes Creek Meadow Landscape Maintenance Assessment Districts. May we have a staff report from City Engineer Kotry?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, staff, and member of public. This is a continuation of our staff report from March 3, where we requested your approval to prepare the engineer's final report and prepare notice to declare city's intention to collect assessment for these 3 districts. Engineer's reports are complete and they are attached to your staff report. And notices were published in Mad River Union for March 17th and March 13th. To date, we have not received any comments on this item, and so we are recommending to continue to collect the assessment on 3 districts. However, in the engineer's report, you will see this year on 2 of the districts, we spent more than what we are collecting. Normally, it's 10 or 20% more, but this time we have noticed double the cost. So we will review that and we'll continue to monitor that next year. And when we come back next year to ask for the request, we will provide more update on that item. So that's all I have as a staff report. Please feel free to ask questions.
Nope. Great. Thank you, Director Kotry, or City Engineer Kotry, excuse me, getting the official titles mixed up. Let's see, we'll start with the questions from council. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
No questions.
Councilmember Goldstein.
No questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Schaefer.
No questions. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Watson.
No questions. Thanks.
No questions as well. Do you have any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
We do not have any public comment on this item.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the Mad River Parkway Business Center Landscape Maintenance Assessment District Resolution number 201-37, the Janes Creek Meadow Landscape Maintenance Assessment District Resolution number 201-38, and the Windsong Subdivision Landscape Maintenance Assessment District Resolution number 201-39.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll call the vote by roll call. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Watson.
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we'll move on to oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the council on matters that are not on tonight's agenda. So please raise your hand if you are on the Zoom webinar, or press *9 now if you are on the phone line and you would like to make a public comment. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. When it is your time for public comment, the clerk will unmute you and invite you to speak. Do we have any public comment?
We do have public comment. Do you want to go ahead, please, Rebecca?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have
Excellent. Hi, my name is Rebecca Crow. I'm a resident of the City of Arcata. This is my second time commenting before the City of Arcata. This is in regards to the Arcata Land Company permit that will be heard before the Humboldt County Planning Commission on April 22nd at a special district meeting. And I think this is a very important topic that the city should pay more attention to. I heard at tonight's council meeting, Councilmember Piera praised the city's Creeks and Wetlands Committee for their planning efforts. This project that's before the Humboldt County Planning Commission, the 23-acre project, which may be reduced in size, has the potential to set a precedent for what Arcata Bottoms will look like in the future for the next 50 years. Currently, the historic use of the past 50 years is currently dictating that site is industrial and can be used for industrial. So really would encourage folks to get involved to look at the land use of the site. I also heard council members Goldstein and Schaefer talk about the concerns for the community and the community workers. Arcata Land Company is owned by Sun Valley. They're not known for creating great, healthy jobs for our community. So what is Arcata going to do to support our workers here? Sun Valley does not address a living wage, farmer worker housing. The water that's proposed for the current project does not currently meet state standards. Just like you heard the presentation just now from Nordic, there's a company that's outreaching, that's talking to the community, that's providing good jobs. They are setting an example for what projects in the county should look like. The project also has the potential to seriously affect property values. Some of my neighbors are underwriters for mortgages, so this GROW is going to have to be disclosed. It will affect the property values and will affect eventually Arcata's sales tax. So I think this is something that's really important that the city council should be paying attention to. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. There is no further public comment.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Let's move on to council and staff reports. Are there any staff updates?
Just quickly, I will fix the ding on my Zoom. I don't know why every time I unmute and mute tonight, it decides to ding, but and also just to share, I sent the council an email on Friday, but we have made an offer that was accepted for a new environmental services director, Emily Sinkhorn. I knew as she started to make her notifications to her project partners and her employers, that things would get out in the community. So I did get a text from a media outlet last night. So I know that it has been out into the media today. So we're excited. Her contract will be before you at your next meeting, but excited to be bringing her on board. She's got a long standing commitment to environmental stewardship in our region, and as well as to really, really good, thorough community-led visioning and public projects, and we'll bring all of those skills to Arcata. So look forward to welcoming her at our next meeting. And that's it.
Great. That's such great news. We're really lucky to have Emily. Okay, let's see. Vice Mayor Watson.
Nothing to report tonight. Thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Atkins Salazar.
Yes, just one thing. As a council, I know we've received a considerable amount of email and communications from different business owners in Arcata expressing their frustrations regarding some of the issues that they've had to been dealing with caused by some crime and people that are being violent and disrupting business and property. Just some significant impacts to being able to do business. And so since both Councilmember Watson and I serve on the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Collaborative, and I also serve as a liaison to Arcata Main Street, we are planning to reach out to Arcata business owners in collaboration with our city manager and the chief of police to work to collaborate on some potential solutions. And then our next step after that, obviously, would then be to bring some ideas or possible solutions back to the council for discussion and consideration. So I just wanted to let you guys, let the council know that that's what Councilmember or Vice Mayor Watson and I will be working towards in the next couple of weeks.
Great. Thanks for working on that. Let's see, Councilmember Goldstein.
Nothing to report, thanks.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Nothing to report, thank you.
For me, just a couple quick things. For Humboldt Waste Management Authority, we are still going through the recruitment process for the executive director. So hopefully that will come to a conclusion that be able to share with you all That's another big position to be filling in our community. The other piece is I know we all have received a tremendous amount of communication regarding Arcata residents' concern about the Arcata Land Company's proposed project. And I know that we have sent communications in the past to the county, but I think it might be appropriate for us to send some sort of updated communication, I think representing the concerns that are being brought forward by our constituents. It's a project that is not, within the city limits, but I think it is important, I think, to reiterate any concerns that we do have and represent the concerns that our constituents have raised. So I know the next Planning Commission meeting, it's, I believe, April 22nd. We have a meeting on the 21st. I don't know if it would be reasonable for us to have a letter prepared to be able to present to the Planning Commission for that meeting. So I wanted to bring that to the council just to see if there was interest in that and if there was any input from staff as well on that.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
I'm really glad you. Go ahead, Stacey. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree. We should do that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm really, really glad you brought this up. I think we've all gotten a lot of emails this week, and I'd be in huge support of sending something in opposition and just backing up the concerns that we've been all hearing, because I think we've been hearing a lot of it. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree and would like to see that as well. I've been toying with a letter on my desktop for the last 2 weeks that I haven't submitted yet. So I feel like there's more teeth behind all of us as well. So, yeah.
I will just ask if Councilmember Schaefer could send me her draft letter. That'd be great. And actually, we're getting a lot of the communication, but clearly we're not getting as much communication as you are as a council. So if there are specific concerns that you want to make sure the letter addresses, please get those to me. If there's particular correspondence that you're receiving that's resonating with you, just make sure you maybe forward that as well. Unless you already see that, myself or David have been CC'd on that email, because I do think you're getting a lot that I'm not seeing at this point. So yeah, we'll talk with each of you as we meet in our weekly meetings and make sure that we're at least capturing maybe all of the ideas so we can bring those forth at the next meeting, and then you guys can edit through if you want to keep them all in or if you want to focus in on just, some primary ones.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, everyone, for entertaining that. Let's see. I think with that, we are adjourned. Thank you,